winter shadows. Jack decided to start anew and moved to the small, isolated town of Huntersville, located in the remote northeastern region of the United States. He was drawn to the area by its promise of solitude and tranquility after enduring a painful breakup that had left him emotionally scarred. The winter in Huntersville was notoriously severe, with snow blanketing the streets in a thick, relentless layer and the biting cold seeping into the deepest parts of one's bones. Despite the harsh conditions, Jack welcomed the isolation, believing it would offer him the peace he desperately needed. His new residence was situated on the outskirts of town, enveloped by an expanse of dense, ancient forest. The house itself was an old two-story structure, weathered and seemingly abandoned. Its secluded position, surrounded by towering trees and shrouded in a perpetual blanket of snow, gave it an air of eerie detachment. To Jack, this was ideal. He hoped that in this remote location, he would be left undisturbed and could finally find the quiet he sought. The first night in the house began uneventfully. As darkness fell, Jack settled into the warmth of his new home, enjoying the crackling sound of the fireplace. However, as the night deepened, he began to notice something unsettling. A faint, disembodied whisper seemed to drift in through the walls, carrying an indecipherable murmur from the depths of the surrounding forest. The whisper was barely audible, but its persistence unsettled him. He dismissed it as nothing more than the wind howling through the trees, a common occurrence in such isolated locations. Determined to remain unaffected, he forced himself to ignore the unsettling noise and drifted off to sleep. Yet the following night brought an escalation of the strange occurrences. The whisper, which had previously been a mere background noise, grew louder and more distinct. Jack found himself unable to ignore it any longer. Driven by an increasing sense of unease, he peered out of the window into the dark, snow-covered expanse. There, through the heavy snowfall and dense shadows, he saw dark silhouettes moving with an unnatural fluidity between the trees. They seemed to shift and writhe like living shadows, their movements unsettlingly clear against the stark white of the snow. The sight filled him with a creeping sense of dread that he couldn't easily shake. By the third night, Jack's curiosity, combined with his growing fear, compelled him to investigate the source of the disturbance. He dressed warmly, wrapping himself in layers of clothing to fend off the biting cold, and grabbed a flashlight. With a deep breath, he stepped out into the frigid night. The cold air stung his face, but he pressed on, driven by a mix of trepidation and determination. As he approached the edge of the forest, the whispers grew louder, almost as if the forest itself was beckoning him deeper into its shadowy depths. The further Jack ventured into the forest, the more the flashlight's beam faltered and flickered. The biting cold seemed to intensify, and an oppressive darkness closed in around him. Suddenly, the flashlight went out, plunging him into complete darkness. The whispering sounds transformed into an ominous, menacing murmur that surrounded him from all directions. Desperation gripped him as he tried to retrace his steps, but the darkness made it impossible to find his way back. The snow underfoot seemed to shift and obscure his path, adding to his mounting panic. Out of the suffocating darkness, a figure emerged. It was an old man with deep, pronounced wrinkles and hollow, empty eyes that glowed with an unsettling light. The old man's presence was almost spectral, his appearance sending a chill down Jack's spine. He spoke in a low, haunting whisper that seemed to resonate with the same eerie cadence as the whispers Jack had been hearing. "You should not have come here," the old man murmured, his voice carrying an air of ominous forewarning. "These lands are cursed. The shadows will not release you." Jack instinctively stepped back, but as he did, he felt icy, skeletal hands grip his shoulders. He turned, and to his terror, saw more figures emerging from the shadows. They surrounded him, their faces contorted with expressions of unending horror, their eyes as hollow and vacant as the old man's. The figures seemed to shift and waver, their forms blending with the darkness of the forest. "We cannot leave," the old man continued, his voice filled with a despairing finality. "And now neither can you." Panic surged through Jack as he struggled to break free from the grasp of the shadows. The cold that enveloped him felt as though it were seeping into his very soul, the fear gnawing at him with a relentless intensity. He screamed, his voice piercing the silence of the night, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive quiet of the forest. When the residents of Huntersville eventually discovered Jack's home, it was deserted. There was no sign of him, no clue as to his whereabouts. The townspeople, who had long been aware of the dark legends surrounding the forest, murmured among themselves. They spoke of the old tales of forest shadows that claimed the souls of unwary travelers. The stories had become part of the town's folklore, but now it seemed that they were more than just stories. In the aftermath of Jack's disappearance, no one dared to venture near the forest after dark. The whispers of the shadows remained a chilling reminder of the ancient forces that lay hidden within the depths of the winter woods. The once peaceful town of Huntersville was forever marked by the lingering presence of the shadows, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the heart of the dark, snowy forest.